It's time for your daily LSU baseball update with Musso at the box. Now, Matt Musso.
And welcome into another edition of Musso at the box. Glad you're here tuning in with me today. We got a lot to get to today as well. Of course, LSU, they swept through their opening weekend, 4 wins, 2 over Central Arkansas, 2 over VMI. All 4 of those wins coming in pretty different ways, as we talked about on a previous episode. What I want to do today is there's listener send in a question. We have open door policy for question. As I always say, we do our episodes, obviously, where that's the main focus. But anytime you have a question, just shoot it my way. Twitter, DM, YouTube comments, check those pretty regularly. However you want to get a question in, get it in, and we'll do our best to answer it on the show because I love all the interaction. So we're going to get to that. And it posed a really interesting question. One maybe concerning issue so far on the offensive side, one maybe concerning issue so far on the pitching side. So kind of want to take those one by one, look at that. And then Jay Johnson, after the game on Sunday, so after the Sunday game against VMI, he mentioned something post-game dealing with the starting rotation that I found very interesting, and I want to dive into it a little bit. It's in line with some of the stuff that we've said here, but it also contradicts a little bit of some of the stuff we said here. So we're going to have to play a little bit of detective maybe there and figure out which path they actually might be wanting to take with the starting rotation, because I think it's obviously impactful. And I wasn't expecting him to say maybe what he did. So we'll let you hear what he said, and we'll give some thoughts on it, obviously, as well. Go ahead, smash the like button, share the video out. All that's greatly appreciated. Get subscribed to the YouTube channel if you haven't already. Hit that bell so you get notified every time a video is posted. Subscribe up to the podcast on your favorite podcast app, Apple, Spotify, Google, wherever you get your podcast. Musso at the Box is there. You can follow me on Twitter at Musso Matthew. The Instagram scrolling there on the bottom as well. Facebook, Matt Musso. All of that is going to be greatly appreciated. And with that, let's dive into today's Musso at the Box. Let's start talking baseball, which is what y'all are all here for. I want to start it out with the listener question. Shout out Stephen Miller on Twitter at dsports24, P1 there. Dropped it in the DM earlier this morning. Found it very, very interesting. And it's not something of the utmost importance, I don't think, right now. They're 4 games into the season, and he even preferenced that, which is more concerning 4 games in, and which will work out quicker. That's the part that I think is very interesting. Which is more concerning, which works out quicker. The multitude of walks by pitchers, or Braswell finding the grass with the hits. And both of those are very, very intriguing. I struggle to say which is more concerning, but we're going to give it a shot. Look, off the top of my head, like before diving in, doing any type of research for this, immediately I just went, well, the walks. The walks are. Because if y'all were here when we previewed the opening weekend, we went through VMI, we went through Central Arkansas, and then it gave you what I wanted to see from LSU. The first thing out of my mouth when we got to the point of what do you want to see from LSU this weekend, the first thing out of my mouth was throw strikes. Don't walk people. Because it was such a problem for them last year. It is why they struggled on the mound last year, was walks. I didn't want to see walks. I understand walks are going to happen. Totally get that. What I didn't want to see was just a parade of relievers or starters out there not hitting the strike zone. Now, when you go and you look at the numbers from the weekend, you'll see 27 walks in 4 games. It's almost 7 walks per game. That ain't good. On paper, that ain't good. That can easily raise eyebrows and concern, right? But digging a little deeper, and I'm going to have to do something that I hate doing, and we've talked about this before too. I hate looking at a lump sum and being like, yeah, but if this isn't there and that isn't there, because you can't, it happened. They count. And I'm not trying to make them not count. That's why I gave you the 27 walks in 4 games, almost 7 walks per game, right off the top of this whole conversation. Because that is your number. That's what the record says that you are right now. Not taking that away. But I think it is valuable to dig a little bit deeper, because I think that number is actually misleading. I think LSU threw a lot more strikes this weekend than you would deduce just by looking at 27 walks in 4 games. First of all, 12 of those walks came in 1 game. All right? I mean, that's a little less than half of those walks came in 1 game. 6 of those walks in that 1 game came from a freshman pitcher making his debut, who we all think is going to be all-world at LSU before his, let's be honest, he stays healthy before his 3 years here are up, right? And plenty of evidence supports that about Cam Johnson. That's obviously who we're talking about. Cam Johnson, when you just look at what he did in the fall at LSU and even some through the winter scrimmages. I don't have to tell you that. We've talked plenty about his success at that point. The game was fast for him. All right? It got away. The zone jumped all over. He couldn't find it with strike with fastball. He couldn't find it with a breaking ball. It was just a rough day for him. And we talked plenty about that. But that's a large chunk of those walks. I actually think when I go back and I look, I think LSU did a pretty good job pounding the strike zone this weekend. We talked about it a little bit when we were recapping the second game against Central Arkansas, and we really honed in on Justin Lohr and Gavin Guidry as the examples. They pitched twice in the weekend, and each of them pounded the strike zone significantly better in their second outing. Both of them pitched on opening day. On opening day, Gavin Guidry threw 19 pitches for 10 strikes. That's not a bad ratio. But when you compare it to 19 pitches, 14 strikes, that's much better. I mean, it just is. And it resulted in what I thought was a better outing for Guidry. But that's already the improvement there that I think you see. Same thing with Justin Lohr. Justin Lohr on opening day, 26 pitches, 13 strikes. Justin Lohr in game number 4, 19 pitches, 12 strikes. Much more efficient. Y'all, he threw almost the same amount of strikes in 7 less pitches. Pretty darn good. And I think you're going to continue to get that the more you go forward with this team. What LSU needs to work on is when those walks do take place. Thatcher Hurd walking the 9-hole hitter on opening day with 2 outs in the 3rd inning. That's a really bad walk. Now, granted, he made a great pitch, didn't get the call. That's going to happen. But that's a bad walk. That sure felt like more than 1 walk, right? That was his only walk on the day. Sure felt like more than 1 walk with how that inning transpired after that. That's what I think LSU needs to work on more than the multitude, because quite honestly, I think the multitude's going to work itself out. I think it's already starting to do that. So that's what I'll say there. I think that is probably because I think it's already working itself out, and I could be very wrong on that. We'll get our answer, obviously, when they take back to the field on Thursday. But I'm inclined to say that works itself out quicker. So by default, and again, because I think it's already working itself out, it's probably not more concerning. By default, I'd have to go with Michael Braswell's hits falling in to that question. Now, let me be clear. I'm not overly concerned about this right now either. I'm surprised. I am surprised by it because, and I think they are too, to be quite honest with you. Michael Braswell, we've talked so much about his bat since he committed to LSU out of the transfer portal last June. I mean, we've been talking about it for, what is that now? 8 months or so? I forget my math. I don't have a calendar in front of me, and I'm awful at math sometimes, unless I really work it out and do it over and over again. Let's see, June's the 6th month. We're in month 2. So, yeah, that's good enough. I don't care, actually. We've been talking about it since last June. That's the point. So it's going to be under a microscope. He led the team in hitting in fall. That was awesome to see. I get it. That's a little bit of a smaller sample size. He hit the ball very well in the winter scrimmages, which, again, I get it, small sample size. But I remember remarking on the show, one of the preseason ones, about him that I'd been out there through fall and through the quote-unquote winter scrimmages, the preseason scrimmages, and more than a handful of times that I'd only seen him fail to get a hit one time. And you go to the ballpark on opening day, and he's in the start. He's leading off. Like, he's your opening day leadoff guy. That tells you what they thought about his ability to put the ball in play, to get on base, to hit the baseball up to that point. That's a major vote of confidence. And he did nothing but put the ball in play on opening day. It just didn't find grass. Same thing game 2. Put the ball in play all the time. It didn't find grass. He didn't strike out in his first 10 at-bats. And he drew a couple of walks. He was putting the ball in play. And then on the Sunday game against VMI, they finally start to fall in for him. You're thinking, all right, here you go. And I was really interested to see him go back out there on Monday against Central Arkansas to wrap up that weekend. And that was probably his worst day at the plate. He struck out for the first 2 times on the season. He hit into a double play. It wasn't pretty. The at-bats didn't look as good as they did the previous 3 days. And I think that's where maybe the concern gets raised a little bit. The other thing that doesn't help is you have a guy like Steven Milam who's just dominating as a true freshman and can play. He's an infielder. Came to LSU as a shortstop. And I've already heard some people, Twitter, message, all that, saying, hey, man, do they put Braswell on the bench and put Milam in at shortstop and move Pearson back to second base? Or, that's just one of them. Or do you give Kucherak a try at shortstop to keep Milam at second base? Pump the brakes. Hold on. They've played 4 games. Michael Braswell is a vacuum at shortstop. It's a premium defensive position. I'm going to want the junior glove there more than the freshman's glove, whether that's Milam or Kucherak. From a defensive standpoint, hold on. Let's see if we can let him work this out a little bit. So what I wanted to do was see if I could find evidence of this maybe being an issue for him in the past. So I went back and dug through some numbers for Michael Braswell in his time at South Carolina. In his freshman year, and we've talked plenty about this, he got off to a torrid start in the pre-conference, and then the numbers lagged a little bit in conference play. But because he got off to such a hot start, he still hit 289 as a freshman. The first 16 games, he got a hit. He started on a 16-game hitting streak and then hit the skids. When you look back at his time as a sophomore, he did not start his sophomore season in the starting lineup. He was playing sparingly. He was playing just about every game, but wasn't starting, wasn't even getting an at-bat in every game either. And it cost him to get off to a really slow start. An injury happened on the infield. I think he ended up sliding in at third base and really played every day from the start of SEC play throughout the rest of the season. And through that, he hit 255. He hit 258 overall in the season. But 255 in that stretch, start of SEC play, all the way through their super regional loss to Florida. And he got off to a really hot start when they inserted him back into the lineup every day. He seems to be a very streaky player coming in from South Carolina. What you saw from him in fall and in winter wasn't streaky. It was much more consistent. I think the hits will eventually fall in for him. He's going to get hot. The key will be, can he keep it consistent? Like he was able to do in the fall, like he was able to do through the winter. Unlike he was able to do at South Carolina. That's where I look at it and go, okay, we all trust Jay Johnson, right? We all trust Mark Wanaka when it comes to offense. Those two guys. We know what they're going to do. We just have to let it play out a little bit more. But if I'm answering that question, I will say Braswell is more concerning right now. Not giving up on him. I don't want him on the bench. I want him at shortstop right now. And let's see if he can work through this. And if you wanted to give him a game off, let him see it for a little bit, and then reinsert him, I'd be okay with that. But I'm not ready to just put him to the side. But if I'm answering that question, I will say his lack of production so far is a little bit more concerning. And another thing that puts that off the top, and I kind of alluded to it, was the fact that they started falling in that Sunday game, and then he came back to the park the next day and had a really rough day. Really his roughest day of the season. And y'all, that's what makes baseball so damn hard. And that's what makes it such a mental grind. When you're pressing, you're wanting that hit to fall in. They finally do. Maybe you feel like you get some confidence, and you come back in and you wear the collar with 2 strikeouts and you hit into a double play. That's what makes baseball absolutely freaking brutal. All right, so that will spoiling something here for one of our preview episodes coming up, but that's going to be something I want to see is how Michael Braswell bounces back from that. Because I think there's plenty of potential there, and I think we've seen some of that already. It's just when he gets hot, because it's coming, because he's proven to be a streaky player. So when that streak comes and he gets hot, can he maintain the consistency with the coaching, the new coaching, and the new, all the stuff that they've changed in his approach at the plate here at LSU? Can he take all of that and be more consistent when his hot streak comes? If he does that, you're going to have a hell of a player at shortstop. You just are, because like we said, the glove's elite. I mean, he's been awesome over there to start the season. Can we all agree on that? I think so. So, still have faith there in Michael Braswell for sure. Again, it's only 4 games in. I know, Steven's question wasn't meant to be a doomsday. That's not at all where he was going with that. But there's some thoughts on both of those things, and I think the pitching will be resolved quicker because I think it's kind of already starting to be. I think we saw that going forward. All right. Look, get subscribed to the podcast. It's greatly appreciated. We're going to shift gears here momentarily, but get subscribed up. Hit the like. Smash the like, I should say. Share it out. All of that is very, very much appreciated. All right, let's shift gears. So I mentioned off the top of the show, the Jay Johnson Sunday after the VMI game, mentioned something about the starting rotation that I was very intrigued by. So there's two pitchers that we've talked an awful lot about here from a starting standpoint. Well, scratch that. There's 2 pitchers that we've talked an awful lot here in general, right? Gage Jump, for obvious reasons. Javen Coleman. We've talked a lot about Gage Jump, like I said, for obvious reasons. The kid throws 96 from the left side. He's got 4 pitches. He's going to be a first-round draft pick one day. And then we've talked about Javen Coleman because of what I saw from him in the scrimmages. And if you're just finding the show here and you didn't listen to those episodes, I was very high on him. I was very impressed. He looked healthy. Ultimately, he looked healthy. We all remember Javen Coleman's freshman year where he really came on strong late for LSU down the stretch, really in the postseason. We all remember the outing out of the bullpen against Oregon in that regional final. Or maybe it was the game. It was the game to send LSU to the regional final. Where the first time they had to beat Oregon twice. They beat them with Coleman on the mound. It's like 6 or whatever innings out of the bullpen. He was awesome. And fastball was up to mid-90s from the left side. It was great. And he was going to be a big part of LSU's team going forward. And he started the next season, Jay Johnson's first season, in the midweek as a starting pitcher, and he got hurt. He blew out. And then he missed all of, all of that season. Kind of rushed back last season, if we're being honest, and pitched well in certain outings, but then hit a wall. So when I saw him in the winter, because he didn't pitch much in the fall, the first thing I took note of was, man, he looked healthy. He looked good. He looked strong. and he was pounding the zone. The fastball was, up to 95 at some points, but really sitting 91, 93, and he'd reach back and find that extra gear when he needed to. And I was really impressed. There was one scrimmage where he had faced the minimum through 3 innings. He was really impressive. So I was like, man, that's going to be a huge piece for you if you're LSU, because he's versatile. You've seen him start. You've seen him long relief. You've seen him come in for an inning. He could do a lot of things for you, and he's going to be a really big piece for you. And he ends up getting that start whenever we talked about that, previewing that opening weekend, where it was like, okay, I think Gage Jump has a chance to start, but if he doesn't, I think it's going to be Javen Coleman. Once Gage Jump pitched on Friday, it was going to be Javen Coleman. And he pitched very well. 3 shutout innings, pounded the zone, did have the 2 walks, but, whatever. They were spread out. They weren't just like back-to-back, oh, God, he lost the strike zone. He pitched around both of them against a really tough lineup. He looked awesome. Jay Johnson, after the game, was asked if Javen Coleman is a realistic option for the starting rotation.
He's a starting pitcher right now for me. I think that's better for him and his arm. But we're just like the position players. We could do a number of things if we wanted to. We could start all left-handers on the weekend if we wanted to. We could start all right-handers on the weekend if we wanted to. So that's probably, still fluid for now, but I like the fact that he can do that.
The very beginning of that cut is what struck me, where it says he's a starting pitcher right now for me. Because I, like many of you, like many who cover this sport around the country, believe that ultimately Gage Jump ends up in LSU's rotation. I know he looked so good at the back end of the bullpen. I understand. Gage Jump is not your closer. Gage Jump's going to be a starting pitcher on this team, and he has to be. So what does that mean for Javen Coleman? Because that's interesting. Also, what he said is he thinks it's better for Coleman's arm, which I can understand. You might be putting more innings on it, but it's scheduled out, right? It's okay, you got a day 2 pitch. You've got a day 2 pitch. This is it. You know it. You can prepare. You can do all your, your prep, recovery, everything. That makes a lot of sense. Opposed to, hey, you pitched on Friday, and by the way, we need a couple innings out of you here today on Sunday because we're in a rubber match against Vanderbilt, and we got to win this series. So all of that makes sense. But you only have 4 rotation spots in college. Jay Johnson said before the season they had 5 guys they were looking at that they thought could start on Friday night. And more than a handful of guys that could just be in this rotation. You're seeing that play out after 1 week, right? I mean, run through them. Thatcher Hurd, yeah, absolutely. Luke Holman, 100%. Gage Jump, yeah, eventually he will be. Javen Coleman, yeah. Cade Anderson, yeah. Nate Ackenhausen, yeah. We've seen Griffin Herring extend, yeah. But I think those 2 are more on the fringe. It's more those first 5 that we went through. So how do you fit that all together? Because I'm going to say it again. Gage Jump has to be in your rotation. He just does. Y'all, he was in there after fall. After fall, if they had to play a game, a series, it would have been Thatcher Hurd, Luke Holman, Gage Jump. Very confident in saying that. Before those last 2 weeks of the scrimmage, maybe it was a plan by them, maybe it wasn't. You're never going to get a straight answer from Jay Johnson during the season on that, whatever. I'm not here to debate that. I don't care because Gage Jump is pitching right now. So I really don't care what happened then. But probably up until before those last 2 weeks, it was going to be Thatcher Hurd, Luke Holman, Gage Jump. Probably. That's me speculating. And again, like I said, I don't even care because the kid's pitching, he looks great. But that guy has to be there. So, this is what I think they might do. Do you remember last year with Thatcher Hurd? We were saying the same thing. He was coming off the Tommy John. He hadn't pitched in a year, but the stuff was undeniable. And you knew, okay, that guy has to be in your rotation. At least we thought that early in the season. And they're going to bring him along. They're going to get him in there. Thatcher Hurd last season had 3 quote-unquote midweek starts. 2 of them were actually midweek starts. He started his debut against Southern, struggled. Started that game the next week on the road at Texas, dominated. And then LSU had a Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. They did not play 5 games. They played 4. Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, weekend after that, where Monday is quote-unquote your midweek, and Thatcher Hurd started that game, and he dominated Butler. And then you went into the weekend against Samford. That was your last weekend before conference play, and Thatcher Hurd was moved into the rotation. I'm wondering if you see something very similar with Gage Jump and Javen Coleman, where while Thatcher Hurd was coming along there in the midweek, Chase Shores held his spot in rotation. Is that something you see here? And Jay maybe kind of alluded to that in that cut as well, where it was, right now he's a starting pitcher. I think it's better for his arm. Remember, they're still bringing him along too. He rushed. Maybe I shouldn't say rushed back. He came back really, 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 really fast last year from Tommy John. Missed a large chunk of the fall. And now they're starting to build him back up too. So in this portion, maybe that is better for his arm to be a starting pitcher because of everything that we just said, where it's, hey, you're pitching here. This is going to be your workload. Go out there, get it while they build him back up. And then you can use him in that versatile spot. Because the other thing Jay said in there was it's still fluid. And they have a number of guys, like the lineup. I'm willing to predict right now, and again, this is just an opinion. This is a prediction. I have nothing more to offer to you on this than that you see something very similar here. That Gage Jump probably stays in the bullpen right now. The workload probably increases a little bit. And then when you get to that final weekend before SEC play, which would be Xavier, Gage Jump finds a spot in the rotation. And you try to set it up, get them on rest before you head to Starkville. That's what I'm thinking. And then when you need a start in the midweek, and the other reason why that could make a lot of sense, you have a 5-game week that week. You have 2 midweek games. So you could still get Javen Coleman that start. You could still, or you could have Gage Jump start one of those games. And then he's really rested when you go into SEC play. That week sets up very well because they play 5 games. They have the 2 games against North Dakota State in the midweek, and then they have the 3 games against Xavier. I believe I have that correct. I do not have that correct. I'm sorry. That is wrong. Ignore me on that. That is the week after. That is the week leading into SEC play that they have the 2 games against North Dakota State. But my original point still stands. That's what I get for not having the schedule up in front of me and talking about it 4 games in when I don't have the whole thing memorized. My original point still stands. When you get to that last week before conference play, I think that's where you probably see the change, just like you did last year. Because y'all Gage Jump has to be in the rotation. And I think Javen Coleman is so valuable that I don't want to pigeonhole him into one role. Because I think he can do so many different things for you. And that's where I think you've seen him actually be most valuable to LSU throughout his career as well, is being able to do those multiple things. So that's kind of what I think they handled there. But that was surprising to me, at least in that moment, because it's kind of what I thought just in general. So to hear Jay say right now he's a starting pitcher for me, I was intrigued by that. But one way or the other, Javen Coleman's a hell of a weapon. All right. That's going to wrap us up for today here on Musso at the Box. Greatly appreciate all of you tuning in. Be back here later this week. We're getting set to preview another 4-game week for LSU. Stony Brook and Northern Illinois come into the box. LSU will face Northern Illinois on Thursday. So getting set to preview that here. Be here for that on Musso at the Box. Greatly appreciate you tuning in. Join next time.